The Muay Thai guys are back. The handsome man himself, Sean Fagan, with Muay Thai technician Paul Reaper Benashik are back at it again. Episode number 139. Now, I believe we had 1 week. Fucked it up, eh?
1 week break. Yes, indeed. But we're back at it. And I thought you had a good, well, I'm actually listening to the podcast as we're recording it. It's messing me up. But yeah, I'm excited to jump into the conversation on the topic that you just kind of came up with because, like you said, a lot of people have been talking about either starting Muay Thai or just essentially coming up with these obstacles or excuses to why they're not able to keep up with their training or get to the gym or whatever it may be. And so I think a lot of people will be able to resonate with it. And so excited to jump into that. But what's going on your side, man? How's Phuket going and how's training?
Training's really good. Feeling really, really strong. Had a little accident last week. Me and Khalil were sparring, and we always have a little bit of fun. Two bigger guys, and they locked us in a cage, essentially. You know, when they split up the ring into fourths, so it's like you have like this beast of an animal, and then this like lanky guy trying to find their way around 1/4 of the ring and then slugging with each other. And there was just a little accident, like things that, you know, like neither person's fault. He threw a hook spinning back fist and I ducked under the hook. And then just on the end of the back fist, as I was coming back up, since I closed the distance a little bit on the duck, it was like the leftovers of the spinning back fist and the elbow part clipped the back of the head and then just split my entire head open. So yeah, just silly shit like that that kind of gets in the way, but back at it the very next morning, ready to go. And I feel like that kind of transitions into a podcast of making little excuses depending on like the different injuries and different things that get in the way, the obstacles that we end up in facing in training inside the gym. But this one is even more focused on the people that are still trying to make that first class or make their way to the gym and get back into a routine.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of go over this type of stuff because I know that we've been there and it's kind of easy. I mean, you know, once you're doing something for so long, it's easy to forget about how hard certain things were, like getting to the gym or just like getting yourself motivated and how easy it is for you to essentially trick yourself to skip out on training if you're like early on in your training of Muay Thai and you just find reasons that are easy for you to negotiate with yourself to not get to the gym. And then if you have never trained Muay Thai, I know it can be an intimidating, anxiety driving type of thing, thinking about going to a Muay Thai gym or MMA gym or whatever type of gym you end up going to. And so I think it's important to understand all these types of resistance that are bound to come your way and just to be prepared because it's going to happen. I mean, at some point or another throughout your career, you're going to have all these, just these self-talk of just these excuses. And it's so easy to just rationalize with yourself, like, oh, like, you know, maybe I should get in shape before I go to the gym and make myself look like a fool, or maybe I should just do some training by myself and learn the basics before I go in. So what brought you up with this idea? What was the I don't even know what the fuck the word is right now, but what was the
Inspiration for it?
That's the word. There you go. Thank you.
I actually had someone reach out to me asking for my advice of starting Muay Thai and them talking about their lack of flexibility and going into the gym and them being a little bit intimidated going into classes, not being very flexible in a sport that involves kicking, which is Muay Thai, right? And I use myself as an example because I've been doing this for about a decade now. But when I say I couldn't kick to the body, that's how tight I was. I was so wound up from doing extreme sports, from skateboarding, snowboarding, kind of sports that only tighten up your body and destroy your body. And I didn't do anything really athletic where I opened the body up and had to really teach it to move in the right directions. So when I say I started from a place that I literally couldn't move my hips, I just framed my style around the things that I could do. So this person was just asking about flexibility. Should I wait to become more flexible before going into the gym. And I try to tell them that if you frame things in this way, like there's no standard, right? To starting Muay Thai, like you have to be this flexible to start this martial art, right? And if you do set that and there is no standard for it, then you might as well like set yourself up for failure to never come in, or to come in 10 years from now, because you may never even get to where you think you should be. Like 10 years later, I still am working on my flexibility, and I wish I had started much earlier. But because of the sport and having experience in the gym is what actually got me to become more flexible.
It sounds so simple, you just show up and you go, but it's really easy to also make these excuses for yourself. And so we're going over a few of the key ones that we hear. And the first one is the one that you mentioned, is that first I need to get fit, or I need to get flexible enough before I can go to the gym. And I used to work as a personal trainer as well. And one of the things that I would hear people say is like, well, I need to lose 20 pounds before I go to the gym, or something like that. It's like, that's the purpose of the gym. The purpose of the gym is to get you in better shape, is to help you with whatever fitness goals you have. And so if you have Muay Thai goals, if you want to be showing up and improving or learning this martial art, then you just kind of have to take a dive into the deep end and just jump into the fire and just learn on the fly. Yeah, there's a lot of resources right now that we've been putting out personally on YouTube and everything, and those are always good supplements, but nothing can beat being there in person, being at a gym in person, and actually getting the live feedback from coaches, training partners, and everyone else in the gym. And so it's easy to just be like, well, I need to work on my cardio before I get to the gym. Otherwise, people are going to think I'm a bitch, or I'm too weak. I need to lift weights before I get to the gym. All these things are just ways for you to rationalize being lazy, essentially, and just procrastinating and not facing your fears. Because what it really comes down to is that you're afraid of going to the gym and essentially making yourself look bad. It's your
Mm.
ego getting in the way. And the ego is one of the first things that you learn quickly is going to get humbled in the Muay Thai gym. And so it's important for you to break that barrier, get to the gym, understand that your ego is trying to hold you back. Meanwhile, the best way to improve, the best way to get fit, the best way to get flexible is just to show up.
It's such a common phrase to face that evil, face first. And there's no better advice to give, I think, because I myself sometimes find myself in those situations. Let's say I'm going against a fighter that is really tricky and I know that they have good sweeps, something like that. I'm like, man, if I kick, I'm going to get swept. So if I only think about that fear of being swept, then I'll never throw the kick. I'll never engage. And if I never engage, I'll never score. And if I never score, there's no way I'm going to win. So it's almost like I defeated myself before the fight even started. What I find myself do much better with is if I expect to be swept, pretty much like I'm going to take my chances. I know I'm taking these risks. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Well, I'm going to get back up. I'm going to be nonchalant about it. And I'm going to keep moving forward and keep trying and try to adjust and make new openings. It's the same exact thing about going back into the gym. If you have these expectations, like you're going to be judged, and it keeps you out of the gym for this week, this month, then that 1 month turns into a year, and then you never end up stepping foot. And now you're out of shape just a year later, and then you still have to face that judgment. You still have to face all of this, but a year has already passed. You wasted a year of your life. So you might as well just face it head on and almost like expect these things. And then 99% of the time, they don't even happen. People are just glad that you're there and that you're trying. And that's the main thing is, listen, man, I'm here. I'm putting in effort. And if you can tell yourself that at the end of the day, then you should feel good about it. No one should judge you for it, depending on like what your performance is. They should rather judge you on your work ethic.
Yeah, it's really easy to let it like creep up on you, like I'll just take today off, and then it's 2 days off. You're like, all right, maybe I'll just take this week off, and then a week off leads to two, and then two leads to a month, and a month leads to 2 months. And the same concept goes with like just getting into the gym for the first time. There's always going to be reasons to why you could put it off. you don't have the money right now, or you need to get in shape, or whatever it is. But when it comes down to it, you got to prioritize your health, your fitness, and your training goals, or whatever it is you want to do with Muay Thai, and just suck it up. Like, this is the first step to being a fighter, is that you're fighting your inner dialogue, all these inner excuses that essentially are trying to hold you back from unleashing your full potential. And so if you're able to just become more aware of when you're making these excuses, and then you win by overcoming these excuses, and you step into the gym and you come to your first class, or you show up after a long layoff. That's another thing too, is that I know I'm guilty of this as well. And sometimes in the past, is like, after an injury or after I've taken some time off, it's easy for me to be like, well, it's been a while, and like, if it'll be weird getting back to the gym, everyone's gonna want to talk to me and like ask me what's going on, or what, all these like things that you just build up in your head, right? And then you get to the gym and everyone's like so happy to see you, and you get back into the flow, and none of the anxieties that you build up in your head like ever come to fruition. And so I think it's important for everyone to understand, like myself included, I'm almost talking to myself, is that like, it's really easy to talk yourself out of things because of all these situations that might not, most likely won't even happen. And like, these are all just future projections that you're putting out there, and you don't even know if these things are actually going to happen. And so you're building all these anxious experiences in your mind that aren't even real yet. And if anything, you're going to be manifesting them. And so you want to avoid doing that. You just want to show up, shut your mind off, just get in the car, show up to the gym, and put in the work. It's obviously easier said than done, but like I said, when you start to train martial arts, when you start to train fighting, you're going to have to learn how to push past these negative thoughts, this self-doubt, all these things that creep up on you. Because when you're doing pad work, or when you're in a fight, you're always going to be hitting these walls of like negative self-talk over and over and over again, and self-doubt. Oh, I'm too tired. How am I going to keep going? Oh, I'm too hurt. Like, how am I going to keep fighting? But you keep going. You figure out a way. And that's what being a fighter is all about. So like, when it comes to just showing up to the gym for the first time, you got to fight yourself in order to get there.
Yeah, a lot of people fight these things without actually fighting them. It's like they go through the experience twice. So they go through it once in their head, and the body almost experiences it as a physical thing that is happening to them, and then they physically have to do it again. So you might as well do it in the real realm in the first place, right? Versus having to experience it two times. And when it comes specifically to getting fit or becoming more mobile before coming to the gym, I think it's pretty straightforward that that's the place where you do get fit and you do get more flexible. And especially when it comes specific to that martial art like Muay Thai, I can have Michael Phelps come in, and I'm sure I can put him through the ringer when it comes to cardio if we're doing sparring rounds or clinching or whatever it may be, because the efficiency that you build in the actual sport and those movements is completely different than anything that you can really do when you're by yourself, or if you're just training cardio, let's say in like a strength and conditioning type of fashion. Like, those things all aid and they can accelerate that type of strength and conditioning, but it's never going to be very good if you don't have that efficiency to really unlock it, that full potential.
Yeah, and then we're moving on to number two. A really good excuse to come up with not showing up is just saying that there's no good gyms around you. And this could be true, and it also could just be an excuse. But regardless, like, just having a physical space that you can show up and train at, ideally with other people, is going to help your game in one form or another. At the very least, go into a gym that might not be quote unquote good enough is going to give you some perspective on what a good gym is and what a good gym isn't. And so just by showing up to a gym and doing your best there, you'll learn what it's all about. And then you'll know, like, you're prejudging it, right? So maybe you haven't been to the gym before, but you have heard things, or you read reviews or whatever it is. But we should all know by now, like, Yelp reviews and TripAdvisor reviews, they're so, you never know what the fuck you're gonna get. Like, here in Copenhagen, like, one thing that drives me crazy is that there's so much good food here, but the top restaurants here are the restaurants I never go to, because like, it just doesn't make sense to why they're ranked number one and why they have such good ratings. Then meanwhile, the lesser known places that don't have nearly any reviews, nearly any like credentials, quote unquote, those are the best fucking food spots, at least here in Thailand. And so the same can go with the gym. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge it based on what other people's opinions are on it. Show up to yourself, or show up by yourself with yourself, and just make sure that you just at least give it a good go. You know what I mean?
It's so interesting because sometimes I see the guys that are in the gym that I can tell aren't having a good time and they're bringing it on themselves. And in my head, I'm like, those are the guys that are leaving those negative reviews. And you have to think about it that way too. It's like the experience that was here in Thailand. If people don't know, here you can pretty much be sued for defamation or even go to jail for leaving like a low review. And
It
this
was
was
a
a big.
huge thing. Yeah, American just went to jail for that, and he had to apologize on like national TV and shit. Some
It was
crazy.
a controversial topic, right? And
Yeah.
he wrote this review and everyone sided with him. But then when you waited for the hotel to release their review, you found out that they were walking up the beach and they were trashed, like they were drunk, they were trashed. They tried to come into the restaurant with their own liquor and they asked them to pretty much pay like a cork fee and they wouldn't. And then eventually the manager finally like let it go and they just still kept complaining and being rude, and we all know these people, and then they're the ones that end up leaving these reviews. So I think what Sean said is to pretty much experience it firsthand is the most important part for you to show up. And there's always going to be something. I feel like Muay Thai is growing so much. There's so many more new locations. You just have to kind of ask around or even, type in Muay Thai in your searches a lot just so you can be contacted. And as well as looking in areas where you can commute to, where you can also practice on your own. You can do it at home, but then have those places that you can drive to. We were actually on the beach the other day. One of the girls that trains here, she was saying, I asked her, I was like, oh man, why did you move to Geelong? Because it's like a 20-30 minute drive on the motorbike. And she's like, man, I'm used to driving 3 hours one way to the gym where I lived. And I really just enjoy those drives to clear my mind and go to training back home. So that 20-30 minutes here is no problem. And I remember those same exact experiences. I've said this multiple times on the podcast. The guys out of our gyms back in Connecticut, nobody came out of our state, fighting for major promotions. But the first guys that did were me, Sturgos, and there was a few other, like Will is in the UFC now, a signed fighter, and a number of guys. And the guys that did make it to the UFC, to Glory Kickboxing, to one championship, to Lion Fight, all the guys that did were the ones that made those drives 3 hours away to Boston to train at Sit Tong, to New York City to train at Top Team, to New Jersey to train with the Institute and all these other, or Weapons 9, to these sparring nights where we trained as a community. So I think people need to just kind of realize that other people are willing to do those things that you're complaining about. And you sitting there and complaining about them isn't going to move you forward. And then you're going to see other people pass you and you're going to think that, oh, they're just privileged, when in reality, that's what they're doing. They're making those drives.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially early on, if you're just starting your Muay Thai journey, is that chances are there's going to be a gym within 2 to 3 hour drive of you in one direction or another. There's going to be some type of gym where you can go to and get some training in. Do you need to go every day? Obviously not. You probably have a job, you probably have a life. And so commuting 4 to 6 hours a day isn't realistic. But doing that
Mhm.
once a week, why the fuck not? You can learn so much if you just make it a Saturday, so you have Saturday off, right? Go go drive 2 or 3 hours to whatever gym it is and be there for the day. Take a private lesson, spend some time there, get to know the people, do all the classes, and really immerse yourself in the training. And then you'll be able to at least take it home with you and then implement it into your own at-home training. And this is going to help you improve in more ways than one. It's going to help you network. It's going to help you just get more familiar with the community and everything as well. And so it's easy to I remember I used to do the Muay Thai guy podcast. I used to interview all these fighters, right? And I remember one interview that stuck out to me was with Matt Embry, who I don't believe is any is fighting any longer, but he's a multiple time world champion. He's fought guys like Sanchai. He was top in Glory, and he would say he didn't have a car. So he would have to take the bus for 3 hours one way and the bus for 3 hours back in order to get some quality training in. And he became a champion because of that, because he actually spent the time to commute to get some quality training in. So it really comes down to your motivation and whether or not you actually want it. Now, obviously, some people's motivations are different than others. Some people do Muay Thai and kickboxing to get in better shape. Other people train to fight and to become a champion. But in the end, we're all training to get better in one form or another. And so you have to make these sacrifices of time and commute in order to actually see the level up in your technique, in your fitness, just in your mindset.
Yeah, and if you can take the local trainers, that might be maybe like if you're looking on a scale of like 1 out of 10 when it comes to quality, if they're like that 5, then that's what you do those 3 or 4 days out of the week that you can do locally because you have consistency, and a consistent 4 or 5 is better than nothing at all. And then that once a week that you were talking about to get that like really high quality training to make the drive out, then you have the entire week to work on exactly what you went over in that class.
Yeah, and then moving on from this, another common excuse number 3, I guess you could say, is just like injuries and overall lethargy and fatigue and that kind of stuff. And trust me, I know what this is. I've had injuries, you've had injuries, and it's really easy to use it as an excuse. When I had my broken arm after my fight, obviously, I'm just like, I have a broken arm, I can't train, right? But I could kick, I could keep, I could still do shit. But I use that as an excuse to be like, nah, maybe I should just rest and relax and let my arm heal, even though I wouldn't be using it, and just do other things right now. But once I realized I started making those excuses, then I was able to actually do something about it. And kind of going back to the original thing is like, I need to get fit before I go to the gym or any of this resistance that you have. I find that I feel worse about myself, about just my situation, when I decide to not do something rather than to do something. For example, like instead of like, if I don't go to the gym, I'm going to feel a lot shittier than if I do go to the gym and even get my ass whooped. Just because I'm staying at home and I know that I'm just wasting time and wasting my energy and not moving towards my goals. Same with injuries. When I'm injured, say I've had a hurt hand for a little while because some motherfucker broke into my house and I'm still healing it up. But I could have used that to be an excuse too. Oh, my hand's hurt. I shouldn't be training. But I was able to use my other hand. I was able to use knees and kicks and that kind of stuff and improve in other areas of my game. And so as long as you're able to have this type of open mind and not let injuries derail you, I mean, obviously some things are more serious than others. If you broke your leg or back or neck, then obviously you're gonna have to take a break. But you can still train your mind. There's always ways that you can continue to be immersed in the sport, be immersed in the art in one form or another. But that being said, I do know from firsthand experience, it can be hard to get yourself out of that mental drudge that you can easily find yourself in.
I almost used to be a lot more empathetic when it comes to this type of stuff, when it comes to injuries, because of having faced these injuries in the past. But now that I have seen the type of recovery that you can make and the rehabilitation that you can progress with a lot faster and accelerate the healing process of if you actually take the time to study and do the exercises, has now left me kind of relentless when it comes to injuries, because I feel like you can really speed up the process, especially with modern medicine, modern physical therapy, just the things that people know about the human body and how you can heal it faster. You see athletes making comebacks like twice as fast as they used to back in the day. And it's all because of the knowledge now we have. I go on Instagram. So
I know what you're
PT,
there we go.
PT Vitals, and then the rehab guys. Like just those two profiles alone, you can pretty much find anything from sciatica, sciatic pain, how to fix that, lower back pain, upper back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, locked
Mm.
shoulders, tennis elbow, all these. I was dealing with tennis elbow for a couple of weeks, and just wasn't doing much about it besides like trying to rest it, taking anti-inflammatories some nights when like it would spaz and I literally couldn't even flex it or extend it. So, but then I actually started to look into what I should be doing for it and like what stretches I should do with like a dumbbell, just flexing it out to the side and all these little things that we look at and you're like, oh, what is this going to do? Like, is this actually going to help? And if you follow the programs, there's so much online. So like, this because you create programs. I know this because I create programs and I see how many people actually open the thing and how many
Few,
people
very few.
go and how many people go through the entire program. And there are some, and 100% of those people see results. Let me tell you that, because I also know the others that there are a number of people that spend the money and they never open it. I'm guilty of this myself. I bought some marketing courses in the past and I'm like, man, this is a great deal. I should look into this. And I never open it. I watched the intro video and then I just forgot about it. It just like snuck somewhere in the back of my mind to put other things in priority. But when it comes to your body, man, like for the long-term effects that you can have on it and go into the gym despite having injuries like what I just talked about, I had the cut. So I could have just stopped there and left. I finished my 180 kicks. I put Vaseline in it so it would stop bleeding because it was running down my entire face. I just put Vaseline in it. It stopped the bleeding. It was enough to get my 180 kicks done. And we did that. I finished my sets. I finished everything like stretching, my repetition at the end. I went home. I went back to training the next morning. I went back to training the next afternoon. And I pretty much just stayed away from the things that were obvious, like people punching me in the back of the head or scratching me and clinching or something like that. And then even then, when you talked about your hand, right? Like I saw you coming back into the gym and you had some accidents, like maybe someone kicked and you blocked with the hand and you're like, fuck, I forgot, like things happen like that. But that's when you make the adjustments and that's when you can be like, oh shit, that's too much. When you actually went back in and you're like, oh man, all right, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe I need to adjust it this way, or I need to just work on this instead, work on my jab instead. None of this. I'll just let the coach know. And I think this would be the best advice is to communicate with the coach and let them know what's on your mind, because sometimes there are serious injuries that you should take care of and no one really knows because like you have this battle within yourself. And I find myself, this is my biggest obstacle. So when we're talking about these 5 and what keeps me from like feeling myself in the gym, or maybe sometimes I'm feeling resentment towards like people, is because inside I'm battling, let's say, an injury that I know is like really messed up. And I just keep saying, oh, it's all right, man. Oh, it's all right, man. Oh, it's all right, man. And then and then it gets worse. Right. So, I think just the communication, like letting your ego go, kind of go to the side, like, man, are they gonna think I'm a pussy because I'm saying like, hey, man, let's just not hit to the head, or like let's not do this, let's go easy on this part. I think letting go of that, so that way you can save your body, but you can still continue to train.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most difficult things as fighters, from what I've heard from interviewing fighters and just being in the fight community, is knowing when you're injured or you're hurt and the difference between the two, and whether you're being a bitch or you need to push through. It's hard to know sometimes, but most of the time, it's just trial by error, and you just kind of have to show up, give it a go. I mean, obviously, be aware and in tune with your body. Like you said, if you can voice that you're dealing with an injury, that's always a better option, just so it's obvious to your training partners who you're sparring and working with that maybe your hand hurts or maybe your leg hurts, so no leg kicks, whatever it may be. But that being said, it's also up to you to know whether or not you should even be showing up to the gym. But most of the time you can. I mean, unless you're fucking like in a, I don't know, in a cast or in a wheelchair or in something like serious, you can usually show up and push through. Whether or not that's the best advice, I'm not sure, because everyone's body is different. And so it's kind of up to you to trial by error. Like I said, show up, see if it's bothering you, and be able to push through it. But yeah, it's hard, and like it's an easy excuse. It's easy to use an injury, or even if it's a little injury, to why you can't train or why you can't show up. But I think, like you said, just letting your ego take a back seat and being like, all right, let me just show up. If I can't spar, I'll tell them. Maybe they'll judge me. Maybe they'll think I'm a pussy, but at least I'm showing up. At least I'm putting in the work. At least I'm at the gym getting some reps in. That's better than not getting any reps in at all.
You have our support. If they do think that and they're judging you, at least you have our support. Let us tell you that. And moving on to the next one would be money, which is something you mentioned earlier, and it coming down to your health. And I honestly, over these however many years that I've been doing this, I have realized that this is probably the worst rationalization that people make for not showing up to the gym or paying their dues at the gym for their local gym or whatever it may be, because the amount of knowledge that's out there and the fee that you're paying versus the priorities that people have is sometimes not realistic in the sense that I see where people spend their money, because now we have social media and you can see people's stories. And I see in every single one of the people that back in Connecticut, they missed their dues or they're gone for 2 months. Hey man, I just lost my job and this and this. Okay, but you're at the club every Friday, every Saturday, you're going you're going out every Sunday. And like, I understand everyone needs to have a life, but at some point you know exactly what the cost of some of these things are, and you're trading that for something that is a long-term health benefit, something that changes your character, something that can actually make you money in the long run, perhaps. And money could be one of two different excuses, I think, too. We also have people asking us, how much should I expect to make? You know, like when they start fighting and expecting to make these
Nothing. Expect to make fucking nothing.
like making real money, you know, for their career, to be able to fight full time and things like this. And that's another thing that keeps people from doing it in the first place, versus like the character development that comes from it, or meeting certain people that leads to other things or to other business ventures, like even people that are in the UFC. Not to use like OnlyFans as an example, but when it comes to sponsorships, when it comes to different ventures that you go into because of the sport, you know, there's money to be made outside of the sport itself, especially if you're a personality or a character, if you have skill sets in other directions. Like you have guys like Onion Topic, who does, you know, design, graphic design, and because he is a well-known fighter, he's able to book jobs with certain companies because they're looking at him for a different reason.
Yeah, I think it's important to prioritize. I mean, that's essentially what I got from what you were saying too, because I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, you can either eat out a couple times a week, or you can go out on the weekend, or you can pay your gym membership and show up and like better yourself and get in better shape and to be able to defend yourself by learning Muay Thai. Um, it's super easy, especially at a younger age, like in your early 20s or your teens, when social life is everything. That's like the most important thing. And when your friends are going out and your friends are spending money on things, going to, I don't know, well, not right now, but going to like sporting events and like other type of things and just dropping bills on concerts and that kind of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, live your life and do what you got to do. But at the same time, like just know that that money could be going to private lessons. That money could be going to your gym membership, could be going to a home gym setup. It could be going to a lot of other things. And so like when I first started training, uh I prioritized. I knew that in order to do anything in the Muay Thai scene, that I would have to focus mainly on Muay Thai. And so my social life did suffer quite a bit, but I knew that was kind of part of the whole game plan. And once I kind of came to terms with that, then I was able to use my money in other ways. I was able to travel to Thailand. I was able to get private lessons with my coach. I was able to travel 3 hours on a Saturday to a different gym and go spar and train with them. And so it really just comes down to like your motivation behind why you're doing Muay Thai and everything. And if money is, I know money can be tough, especially nowadays with just the way of the world and everything.
Mhm.
But if you have any type of money coming in and you're spending any type of money, I think it's up to you to do a quick audit on yourself and where's that money going and where can you save a little money and where could you actually
That's hard, eh?
yeah, man. Yeah. So it's just a matter of just really trying to prioritize. And like the thing about Muay Thai is you don't get into Muay Thai to make money. You do not, it's not a lucrative job by any means. Um, and even MMA, like MMA, you're not making a lot of money. You're making more money than Muay Thai, that's for fucking sure, but not, you're still not making that much money. It's a passion pursuit. It's a, like you said, a character development type of thing. It's a self development and self enlightenment type of thing where you're just trying to learn more about yourself and improve yourself in more ways than you could even imagine without actually having to fight. And so I think it really just comes down to, yeah, like I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but priorities, I mean, that's all these excuses, right? Like you need to get fit and be flexible first. No gyms are good around me. Injuries, fatigue, money. Like you can use all those, or you can just kind of figure out what your priorities and your motivation is for training. And once you figure that out, then your rational, like usually when you're making excuses, it's your rational brain trying to talk you out of it. It's the logic, like, oh, there's no good gyms around me, so why even train? Or I don't have any money, so I might as well just not even worry about training. Or I should get in shape before I go to the gym. Those are all logical thoughts. So if you're able to kind of turn that around and use logic to your advantage, then you'll be able to actually show up to the gym and do things. Well, in order to get in good shape, I need to show up to the gym. Or maybe money isn't the issue. Maybe it's just my priorities that are the issue.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of different ways. You have to play like Jedi mind tricks with yourself. Like you always just have to be trying to convince yourself to do the things that you know that you should be doing. But like in the book Turning Pro that we both read recently, resistance is a bitch, and it's always going to be showing up in different forms. Whether it's that self doubt, whether it's no money in your bank account, whether it's an injury that can that you can. It's like giving you resistance is giving you an excuse to not show up, to not go to the gym, to not train, and it's up to you to decide whether or not you can take the easy way out or you can step up and actually take a swing at the plate.
That book was such a big eye opener. Just being someone that already naturally kind of has a lot of these principles in their mind, just with how I was raised, coming from Europe and just being raised as like an immigrant kid from parents that kind of came up from cleaning houses to actually, becoming somebody here in back in the United States. And like I was telling Mia this the other day because she was talking about like going to movies and like getting snacks or whatever, and I was like, man, if I was going anywhere, I was like, oh, we're going here for the day, I'm probably gonna be hungry. They're like, all right, so you better eat now, or like, oh, you better, like make yourself a sandwich before you go. And I'd be like, 10 years old, 11 years old. They're like, you make yourself lunch, you go and do this. Like we spend zero money on things like food or going out or gifts, like for the kids. Like it was only rewards for like positive things when came to education. Like I can buy as many books as I want. My mother would get me every single book I wanted if I wanted to read something. When it came to video games, I'd have to work my ass off for like $10 that week and save up for 6 weeks to get my PS2 video game. But when it came to like education, or if I wanted to get like a film course and like get a new camera where I'm like practicing a skill, or let's say going to a gym or something like that, then she would pay for those specific things. And it's like I took this with me like for the rest of my life. I remember being in high school and in college, and I'm like, well, all these people are like, hey, come out this weekend. And I'm like, how much is it? And it's this and this. I'm like, fuck, if I spend this every week, like $150 or $200, I'm like, or I can just wait. And then later in life, I can live a baller life versus like now doing this local thing, seeing the same people every single weekend and then wasting my money away. And then like 10 years from now, my account is in the same place. I'm in the same place. I never went anywhere versus just like taking that extra time and thinking a little bit more long term, like investing in your health long term, investing in your bank account long term, investing in character development long term. Because after 10 years, if you develop that character to be something else, you're going to meet better people. You're going to fall in love with somebody better than you probably fell in love with like back in your hometown, like where you literally just never stepped foot outside of it. You're going to see places that you never thought you would see if you just think a little bit more like further ahead.
Yeah, it all just comes down to investing in yourself. That's one of the key things that I always try to emphasize whenever I'm just discussing like why I train Muay Thai or why I spend my money on certain things. Is usually to better myself in one way or another. Because if I'm investing in myself, if I'm bettering myself through Muay Thai, I use obviously Muay Thai as a tool to improve ourselves, right? And so if I am investing in myself through Muay Thai, that's going to help me in all aspects of my life. That's going to help me with my relationships because I'll be able to be more in tune and aware of my thoughts and my emotions, because going through fight camp, you kind of have to know what you're dealing with. I'll also just be that much more confident because I'm putting in the work. I'm more disciplined in all areas of my life because I'm disciplined in the gym. And it all just kind of cascades into other aspects of your life. And so that's why when like people say they don't have money for Muay Thai or they don't have money for training or going to the gym, like I said, I get that money's tight and money's tough. But if you care about yourself and the people around you, you have to do yourself a favor and actually go to the gym, spend the money on the things that are going to help you better yourself as a person. And then lastly, moving to the fifth and final excuse. Obviously, there's more excuses. There's a million fucking excuses you can come up with. But one of the things that we hear often is that I enjoy martial arts, but I'm kind of intimidated by actually fighting. And I get it. I was intimidated by fighting as well. I think most people are intimidated by fighting in one form or another when they first start. But should that stop you from training and learning how to fight? I don't think so.
And a lot of the time, the people that are capable of the greatest violence are the ones that are mostly at peace of themselves, and they actually aren't very violent people. Actually, I was watching this video today, and it's a kid going up to people at a UFC gym and like talking shit to them, right? And I've seen the same exact video in a regular lifting gym where he does the same thing, and guys start actual fights with him. But then when he goes to the UFC gym, I'm kind of watching it, and as he's saying all these things to these guys, he's like, "Yo, you guys got to work on your cardio," because he's like, "Hey, y'all want to spar and shadow box?" And they're like, "We just sparred for 2 hours, bro. We're just trying to chill out now." And he's like, "Oh, damn, y'all got to work on your cardio. Just 2 hours of sparring." And they're all like, "Man, it's all good. Just move on." Like they're all like very cordial with him. They're like cool with him. They have nothing to prove, and it's like that quote, like you're not truly a peaceful person unless you're actually capable of true violence.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of, yeah, just understanding that if you want to study martial arts, then you have to learn how to fight. I mean, that's essentially what martial arts is kind of all about. Will you have to fight? Do you have to fight? No, that doesn't have to
Mm.
be a goal of yours at all. But like you said, you'd rather be what was it? I'd rather be a warrior in the garden than a garden in a war, a gardener in a war. You know what I mean? And so it's also just good to be prepared. Just be prepared, know how to defend yourself. Like I was thinking for those of you who don't know, my house was broken into like 3 or 4 months ago, and I'm a professional fighter, right? So like I know how to defend myself. But what if I didn't? Like how much more scared would I have been? How much less prepared and less aware would I have been about the situation? And I think about like people who don't actually train and know how to defend themselves, how like uncertain they must feel sometimes, especially if they have to deal with a break-in or deal with some type of confrontation where they actually don't know how to defend themselves. That can be a really scary thing. And so just knowing that like if shit hits the fan that you can handle yourself, I mean, it's just going to give you that much more security, that much more sense of just safety and sense of calmness. And it's funny too, because when I tell this story about when the guy broke into my house, and like, man, when I was punching him, my technique just went out the fucking window. It's crazy because like I wasn't changing levels, I wasn't throwing combinations, I was just throwing my fucking right hand over and over and over again. And I'm a trained fighter, so imagine like for people who aren't trained at all, like it must just be a fucking shit show, you know. And so I think it's just really important to like you don't have to fight, but being capable of fighting, like we've been mentioning, I think is so valuable. It's like invaluable.
Yeah, and just like you said, just because you're training for it or gaining the skill set or you're just using it for fitness, you never have to feel the pressure of having to use it. You know, you have the skill set or you get the benefits and the character development of it, the humbleness that comes with it, like just to realize like what reality is when you're under pressure and to be able to overcome pressure and resistance, and at the end of the day to be like, oh man, like that felt hard and then I pushed through that barrier and now I feel better about myself. Like that could be your reward. It doesn't have to be competition like it is for us. So I think that's a beautiful way of capping that one off.
Boom, well said. So, as we normally do, we'll get into a QA session with our fellow YouTube commenters, and we got a few questions already. If you're watching here live as well, you can drop a question right here, and we'll try to get to it. We'll do about like 10 or 15 minutes worth of Q&A, and we got the first one from Richie Torres. He did a sponsored comment for $5. He says, I've been training since a young boy, have fought in MMA and Muay Thai, and I'm pushing 40 and still want to fight, but haven't since 2012. Any advice? Go to you, Paul.
So 8 years off, coming back in, I'll definitely take care of your fitness, your conditioning, and spend a lot of time just developing everything. So that way you can almost expect injuries or things to come about, but have your body be ready and prepared for it, both mentally and physically. And then just take your time and progress into the actual sparring and getting back to everything. I mean, look at Silva. He looked amazing this last weekend. He was like a little step behind, but that's at 45 years old with a guy that has a ton of miles on him. So you can look at it that way, that you didn't put on any miles in these last 8 years. So take that to your advantage. And if you just progress the right way, really focus on that's what I hear from most guys that are, you know, like above 35 and fighting, is that they just need to spend a lot more time on mobility and flexibility. So just doing it every morning, doing it before going to bed and after training, just instead of spending an extra hour of training where you felt like you're redlining, spend that extra hour on the actual rehab work and get yourself back into shape that way. Then just make sure you get a ton of sparring so you shake that rust off in the sparring room and you're a lot more confident going into the fight.
Yeah, Paul pretty much covered it. Just put in the work, listen to your body, make sure that you're doing the recovery sessions and training your mindset and everything as well on the outside. Because, like, I mean, you probably know a lot more than you knew when you first started training, right? And like me personally, I wish I knew what I know now when I first started. And so, like, although I was probably like physically in more of a peak, I guess you could say, when I was in my early 20s, I was physically stronger than I actually could lift more weights or whatever. I wasn't nearly as smart or calculated or intelligent about my fight game. And so if you end up going into the ring and you want to compete, I mean, use your brains. I mean, use your life experience, because this is going to help you balance all aspects of training with your life. And then you're also going to be much more in tune with your body because you've been in your body longer. You know what kind of little pains you have and what works for you and what doesn't. So use it to your advantage. I mean, because like I know people in their 50s and their 40s, they all compete and they all do well. And it's all about just doing the best you can. So hopefully that helps. Allison B, we got a question from. Thank you for all the advice so far. Any tips on how to improve the ability to maintain high intensity during sessions? I do low intensity long runs outside of class. Anything else you would recommend?
I really enjoy part of the programming that's here, which is in the mornings we do more interval training, you know, like pretty much repeating a combination down the line, going as hard as we can, and then getting a rest while one of our partners goes down the line. And that's similar to that, like hit Tabata type of training. So you can always do that solo on the bag. So just because you have a 3-minute round doesn't mean you have to be at like a 40-50% intensity for 3 minutes. You can actually work really hard for 20 seconds, take that 10 seconds to just work on your jab, your teep, move your footwork, and then get back to that intensity, hitting those hard combinations, hitting it as hard as you can for 20 seconds, working on intensity, and then just working also on recovery. I think it's really important. I feel like people forget to breathe. They forget to like lower their heart rate back down to take control back their mind, the control of their mind. So I think that's really important, is to learn how to go through these different zones, because you can't maintain that high intensity for a long time. So to kind of pop in and out of those zones at your pace, on the bag work, on the pad work, sparring, etc.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. Is like in the context of a fight, you're not. I mean, obviously it's intense, and you're gonna be doing a lot of explosive movements and everything. But you're also gonna be playing defense. You're gonna be teeping. You're gonna be using your footwork and catching your breath. And so being able to also add in defensive maneuvers, some footwork, some teeps, and focus on your breathing in between these explosive movements on the bag or in sparring is going to be really important. And then in addition to that, I would also recommend checking out Don Hetrick, who speaks about the aerobic capacity, your anaerobic threshold, and a number of other cardio related training methods that are going to benefit you. And he's just able to articulate it in a way that makes a lot of sense. So definitely check out Hetrick when it comes to cardio or strength and conditioning for Muay Thai. We got Mad Moon Rabbit. I'm falling in love with Muay Thai. How much can you all speak on the booking of a fight, dealing with promoters, betting odds, and the business side of the profession? A bit for another podcast. Yes, I think this definitely could be a whole nother podcast. But any quick insights on this, Paul?
Well, I think most of this stuff is taken care of if you have a real coach, and they take care of most of these things. And you, as a fighter, you actually don't want to be personally doing this. A lot of other fighters or other coaches, they look down upon the students that just kind of book their own fights and do their own thing. Like you should have some say in booking a fight, like when you feel ready, but usually the coach will come to you when they feel like you're ready, or you have a conversation with them and you can speak about it together. But you directly talking with promoters, they'll either take advantage of you, or you will have some personal confrontations with each other, which also doesn't work in your favor. So I would leave all those questions and your worries to your coach. That's their job, is to like pretty much be an advocate for you.
I think that's well said. I know personally that sometimes I've had to book my own fights and get my own fights, and the whole business side of Muay Thai is definitely a different realm that often gets kind of glossed over. And so I do think this is a good topic for another podcast. But when it comes to betting odds, don't worry about betting odds and shit. That doesn't matter. Dealing with promoters, generally speaking, I haven't had like the worst experiences with promoters, but I haven't had good experiences with promoters either. And so you just got to know that they're in it to promote, and they're in it to sell tickets and make money and stuff. And most of the time, from this, again, this is speaking from my personal experience, the promoters don't necessarily care about the fighters. I find that the fight matchmakers care about the fighters a lot more than the promoters do, because typically the matchmakers are former fighters. But yeah, I think it would help to have a team, a coach and a trainer kind of do the dirty work for you, if you know what I mean, and you just show up and worry about training. When it comes to like the business side, if you actually want to be able to make money fighting Muay Thai, and know that you're like 10% of your purse is going to your trainer and all this kind of stuff, I think it's important for you to learn how to market yourself online. I think we did a podcast at this one point, or not just market yourself online, just market yourself, period, because the more tickets you sell, the more the promoter's going to like you, the more money you're going to make, and so on and so forth. So maybe this will be something that we dive into in a future podcast. Thank you for the question. We'll do another 5 minutes and then we're going to wrap it up. So we'll try to rapid fire these last few and see if we can get them all in.
We had, hold on, because before these disappeared, we had a question that stuck out to me because we just went over this bullshit. Is They asked, should I train another martial art to get me ready for Muay Thai? And no, you train Muay Thai to get you ready for Muay Thai.
Yes. And we also did a whole other I think one of the most recent podcasts we did about like cross training other martial arts. It depends on your
Mhm.
goals, right? If you want to be good at Muay Thai, do Muay Thai. If you want to be good at karate, do karate. And get a really good. So, like, if you're going to do another martial art, first get a really fucking good foundation and like be advanced in Muay Thai before you start adding other bells and whistles to it. So, there you go. We got another one from Harg Nukes. Is it good to train every day? What about regeneration? I'm assuming you mean recovery. It's important to
Mhm.
work with weight in the gym, or is it better to work with body weight? Yes, train every day, recover every day, listen to your body. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some days off because some days you're going to be sore, you're going to be beat up and everything. But generally speaking, you need to, especially early on, find out where your capacity is, where the bar is, and then you'll be able to adjust and create a more systematic training schedule based on your abilities, essentially. When it comes to working with weights in the gym, don't worry about that so much in the beginning. Yes, you want a good strength foundation and good athletic foundation when it comes to like your movement patterns and everything. That is definitely important. But when it comes down to it, body weight and just like regular movement patterns related to Muay Thai, just like body weight movements like squats and push-ups and that kind of stuff are going to be extremely beneficial. It can be really easy to get carried away with weights early on when they're not going to be as important as the technique and the understanding of the sport at first.
Yeah, I feel like especially now it can be really overwhelming to start a new sport and then you get like everyone from everywhere trying to have their input like, oh, you need massage, oh, you need like an ice bath, oh, you need like cryo, oh, you need strength and conditioning, but you also need like GSP did gymnastics and like this guy did this and Lomachenko did dance. I should take dance class every day, like all these different things. So take Sean's advice on like building a strong foundation and then just like depending on your style, just kind of like picking all these little things that can make you unique. And when it comes to like regeneration, as you phrased it, I think active recovery actually accelerates recovery in the rehab process. So I like what I said about injuries, even being injured or rehabbing from a hard session, I feel like active recovery and getting the joints and body moving. We were talking about this the other day because we have a lot of guys fighting recently. Like they feel like if they sit at home for the whole week after the fight versus like coming in the gym at least to like shadow and stretch and like get the joints warm again, they just start to lock up and feel stale.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that. Active recovery is key. Bobby Bush, do you have any weapons training experience? In your opinion, do you think it's worth training? Any additional opinions? I used to teach kids bow staff and nunchucks, and so I have a little bit of experience there. But
Gonna
no,
pull those out.
yeah, right. Seriousness though, I don't really have that much. Is it worth knowing? Uh, that's all relative, I guess you could say. It depends on your priorities and whether or not you feel like learning weapons is going to be important. My old trainer JJ, they would teach Kali and knife fighting, and knife fighting seems like pretty relevant. I mean, are you going to use a bow staff or nunchucks in real life? Maybe not, but a knife, you might get in a situation with that at one point or another. So you can do that. Any thoughts on this topic, Paul?
Is it worth training? I think if I were to go back to the United States right now, I would buy a gun, learn to shoot, and then possibly also do like a little bit of weapons training when it comes to like knives and pistols.
Yes, indeed. All right, next we'll do two more questions. Jack Oach, what sort of exercises would you go into gym for strength and conditioning? In the beginning, squat, bench press, deadlift. Just focus on
Mm-hmm.
those. There you go. Build a really solid foundation, and then you could add some more. Some more compound movements are always good. Isolations aren't going to be the best when it comes to like Muay Thai strength and conditioning. It's good for like bodybuilding and that type of training split. But like I said, check out heatrick.com. He's your guy for strength and conditioning with Muay Thai.
Boom.
Boom. All right, we got time for two more, maybe. I don't think we even have two more questions, do we? We got Ayub Idama. When I use my low kicks, I always feel pain after my sparring on the muscle next to my shin bone. How can I train that muscle? I don't know.
You can roll that. No, no, honestly, you can roll it out. It's almost like a shin splint. I get it because sometimes if you turn your shin over too much, then you'll hit the muscle instead of hitting the actual bone. So I find it that I use oil and I massage that muscle itself to get release, or I get on a foam roller and I put it on the side and roll it out that way. I have a Tim Tam now, the pulse massager, and I actually use it on that muscle next to my shin. But I find it that guys get it a lot if they're running and get shin splints, or you're turning the kick over too much on your low kick, where like it's actually not hitting the top blade of the bone, but it's overturning and hitting the flat part where the muscle is connected against.
Boom. Well, hopefully that answered your question. Thanks everyone for tuning in live with us, asking your questions, listen to us chit chat and everything. We do these every Thursday. It's Thursday, right? Yeah, we try to do these every Thursday, and so make sure you just check in. Usually, we're doing these around 7:30 Thailand time. We did a little bit earlier today just because it worked out for us. Normally we're training at this time, but both of us happen not to be training this afternoon, so it kind of worked out. And yeah, anything you want to leave out with?
Well, we have questions pouring in now. If you would like to get some of these questions answered on podcast, make sure that we get you shouted out. You can go to patreon.com/Muay Thai guys. If you sign up on there, you're guaranteed to have your questions answered. So support the podcast on patreon.com/Muay Thai guys. Right now, I actually have a discount for the Striking Academy for the podcast. So if you go to muaythaitechnician.com/striking academy, you can type in the coupon code podcast. Pretty simple, podcast. If you're supporting on the podcast, we know you're a real fan because you're listening to our voices for like a straight hour and you have questions and we're in your ear. I'm in your ear. I'm here. You're listening to me. I can control you, right? So you can head on over there, coupon code podcast. You get a quarter off, 25% off. And we just added a whole new program, a low kick program. So if the outside muscle on your shins is hurting, you can properly learn how to low kick. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too much on my end. I'm finishing up a heavy bag blueprint sale today. So if you're listening to this today, today's the last day that you can grab it. But other than that, we're gonna be
bulk out. You get a bulk out workout with
bulk out workout. Oh man, this stuff is gonna be it's next level shit. I'm having a lot of fun creating it. It's a little time consuming, but these fight like workouts are gonna be like really really fun. They're like super fun. You're learning how to fight like walkout. You're doing the same techniques, and I'm also adding drills that highlight certain techniques, so this way you can get even better at them. So obviously with walkout, we focus on the lead teep, the switch kick, and the switch knee a lot, the long guard, and yeah, it's just gonna be so much fun. So I'll be probably giving away a free. You can check out the preview of the walkout workout. I'm also probably going to be releasing a portion of it on YouTube as well, just to give you all some insight. And other than that, just make sure you just keep up to date because Black Friday is coming around. There's going to be some big sales then. And then New Year's and Christmas as well. Going to be doing a Fighter's Body Challenge and reopening the membership there as well. And so, yeah, just keep up on that. And yeah, that's all I got for you. But wrapping up.
Muay Thai guys, next week we'll have episode number 140 hitting another milestone.